The other night, I went to my Toastmasters group. And if you've ever decided to go to Toastmasters, you will have discovered that it's a very interesting club because anybody can show up. No matter how goofy these people are, anybody can show up and talk about things that sometimes don't make a lot of sense. But it's a good place to practice public speaking. Because everybody realizes on some level that if you practice public speaking, it will have a spillover effect into your overall social confidence. Anyhow, there was this lady there that was talking about her psychic experience with her psychic that she sees on a regular basis. At first, when she decided to go see the psychic to see if she could predict her future and give her advice on her future, she wasn't quite sure if it was actually a legitimate thing. She was kind of skeptical. And it's okay to be skeptical so long as being skeptical doesn't keep you completely on the sidelines for your entire life. Like some people, they claim to be skeptical, but they think this is some kind of superior mindset. But this skeptical superior mindset, or the skeptical self-delusional superior mindset, is really a cope because they're afraid to get into the game of life. And so they claim they're being skeptical, but in reality, they're just being afraid. But she had a kind of a more healthy skepticism toward the idea of psychic phenomenon. So she started to see this psychic, and at first this psychic was very, very accurate in predicting future events. She was very, very helpful in giving her advice on how to handle these future events. And so they started to hang out together, and this psychic started to tell her her origin story about how she became a psychic, how she became a professional psychic. And at first, she thought that everybody had psychic abilities. I mean, if this is what happens in life, you go out into the world, you become a young adult, and you start to hear other people's thoughts. You just assume this is normal. But then she would see other people asking questions to the person whose thoughts she could read, and the questions would kind of indicate that they couldn't read her thoughts, their thoughts, his thoughts, like she could read their thoughts. And so she started to suspect that she had a gift. She looked at herself in the mirror and said, "You have a gift. You are able to do things that other people can't do. You are able to understand things that other people can't understand. You are able to perceive things in a way that other people can't perceive." But then she started to realize that a lot of these people, when she started to notice this gift, to notice what is inside of other people's heads, she started to realize that a lot of people don't have very healthy thoughts. A lot of people don't have a lot of happy thoughts. A lot of people don't have any life-enhancing thoughts. In fact, a lot of people, even though they look friendly and polite on the outside, inside are filled with hate and anger and blame towards the world. And so she realized then that she has another skill. She could not only read the thoughts of other people, but she could implant thoughts of other people. Now, reading thoughts was one type of thought reading characteristic, but implanting thoughts was a whole different ballgame. Because when you read thoughts from other people, you can read them in extreme detail. You can understand the thoughts from other people in extreme detail. You can understand the self-talk from other people in extreme detail. But when she started to experiment with how she could push thoughts into the brains of others, she couldn't push them in with nearly as much detail as she could when she read the thoughts from other people. But she could put in thoughts of amnesia. She could put in thought-destroying cluster bombs that would poof into their brain and make them forget what they were doing. And she started to see herself as a protector of innocent people. Because she didn't really have a lot of experience, a lot of experimental evidence of a correlation or any kind of correlation between the negative thoughts of other people that she could read and their behaviors out in the world. And so just to be on the safe side, she started to experiment with dropping in these amnesia cluster bombs into the people around her that were thinking negative thoughts that she would fear would lead to negative behaviors toward other people. It reminded me of this movie that I saw, a really low-budget horror movie about this dentist. And this dentist would secretly put these implants into people's teeth. And somehow, through movie magic, movie storytelling magic, through these implants, he could read the thoughts of other people. But through these implants, he could create amnesia into the brains of other people, because he decided that he was going to be the one to save the world and keep evil people from doing evil things, which is kind of a common motif in movies. You have this villain, but this villain thinks he's the good guy, and he does things that other people would think are villainous things, but in his own mind, he's being the good guy because he's kind of got this weird, convoluted cope about what he's doing that makes him think he's better than everybody, and he has the wherewithal and the responsibility of protecting humanity through his evil deeds. And so he would tell himself he was saving humanity by reading the thoughts of people through these dental implants. And then when he decided their thoughts were not very helpful, he would blast them with amnesia and they would forget everything. They would just be in the middle of a sentence talking to somebody and just, what? They would forget what they were going to say. I was listening to this podcast, and this psychiatrist who had shifted from becoming a psychiatrist into a relationship coach was telling her origin story. Back when she started to be a psychiatrist, a therapist, she was always looking for new customers, because if you're a psychiatrist or a therapist, you have to go into a lot of debt to start your therapy business. So when you're in the early phases of your career, you have to find customers and clients from everywhere that you can. So you'll take whatever you can get. And after a few years of building up her business and having a huge roster of clients and starting to pay back her loans, she realized that most of her clients, while they were helping her to pay her bills, while they were helping her to pay off her debts, weren't really interested in helping themselves. They just came in to talk to her because all they wanted to do is complain about life. All they wanted to do is complain about why it's not their fault that their lives suck. And she started to develop this disdain for these type of people. And once she started to build a reputation as a very good therapist, she started to qualify hard her patients, because she wanted patients that would actually do the work to improve themselves. She wanted to attract patients that would actually do the work to get into the game of life and through their own efforts do things that would improve their lives. And so she spent the first 2 or 3 sessions asking them questions to see if they qualified to be her patient or not. And she came up with a very simple list of questions to ask them. What are your greatest successes? How do you overcome obstacles? Tell me about your past few relationships. And how they answered these questions, she could tell if they were someone who was willing to do the dirty work, do the daily grind of getting into the game of life, or if they were what she called sideline heroes. And she said sideline heroes are people that are forever affixed to the sidelines of life, and they're never going to get into the game of life, but they have this self-delusional idea that they are superior to the game of life because they understand things in a way that other people don't understand, that they see the world in a way that other people can't see, and their unique viewpoint of the world, their unique understanding of the world makes them superior to the world that they're really afraid to get into. And what they think is an understanding of the world is really a massively complex internal cope that keeps themselves both a victim and a hero in their own mind. And they're a victim because they blame the world for their lack of success. It's not their fault they can't get a relationship. It's not their fault they can't make any money. It's not their fault they can't lose any weight. It's not their fault they can't advance their career. It's the world's fault. But in order to keep themselves from understanding this on a conscious level and keeping this victimhood deeply in their subconscious, they create this massive convoluted cope which explains the world as being the bad guy. And because this convoluted cope is so intricate in their mind, they mistake this intricate cope as an intricate understanding of the world itself, which is why she calls them sideline heroes. But she transitioned out of that into relationship coaching because that's where the money's at. And so she teaches people not how to find relationship partners, but how to qualify relationship partners. Because according to her, in modern times, there's this ancient instinct that is causing a lot of havoc in otherwise normal relationships. Back in the old days of hunter-gatherers, or back in the old days up to maybe 20 or 30 years ago, when people found somebody, finding a decent relationship partner was always a rare thing. So we have these ancient instincts that says when you look at someone and you see this person, you will start to self-hypnotize yourself to believe that this person is perfect for you. And if you have two people in an ancient hunter-gatherer environment or an ancient agricultural environment and they met each other and they both realized through evolutionary programming that this was a very rare occasion, they had to really convince themselves that each other was the perfect partner to keep the relationship together. And so we have this massive collection of self-hypnotic subconscious programs that makes us believe that whatever relationship partner we see, they're the perfect one for us, and we overlook all their negative points. This used to be a good thing back when you really only had one or two chances to find a relationship partner. But today, because of social media, because of hookup culture, because of the massive opportunity costs that involve yourselves when in a relationship, you probably have had this experience. You meet somebody and you're normally not that socially outgoing, and you meet somebody and you're in the early phases of the relationship and you're starting to feel more confident socially, and you start to notice all the other people that you could be in a relationship with. In the past, this wasn't such a big deal because all the other people that you would start to see because of your increased relationship confidence, they would be people you interact with on a regular basis. But today, because of social media and online dating and hookup culture, the sheer amount of these opportunity costs are massive. So when you get into a relationship and you see all these other people that you think you could be in a relationship with, you start to notice the other person in much more less hypnotic terms, and you start to over-focus on their negative qualities, which makes it hard to maintain a relationship. So her angle is to teach people how to qualify hard the person that you're thinking about becoming in a relationship with. And she said the basic strategy is simple. The first 3 dates, you have to keep yourself from developing any emotional attachment to the person you're with, which means you can't have sex with them. Because most people, once you have sex with somebody, you start to develop strong emotions for this person, and it's really hard to see them objectively. That's when the self-hypnotic, this is the perfect person for me, instinct kicks off. You have to avoid that. And on these first 3 critical dates, you have to ask them the same questions that she used to ask her patients to see if they were people that were actually willing to get into the game or if they were sideline heroes. And the questions are, tell me about your greatest successes. Tell me about how you handle obstacles. Tell me about your last few relationship partners. Now, because this is a dating scenario and not a therapeutic scenario, you have to kind of be a little covert when finding out this information. You can't really ask these questions directly. You have to kind of steer the conversation towards these topics and pay close attention to their answers so you can discern whether your potential relationship partner is someone who realizes the necessity of getting in the game and solving the problems of life, or if they see themselves as a sideline hero and they're both a hero because they understand things and they're a victim because nothing is their fault and they're not responsible for anything. These 3 questions, according to her, has helped her help other people create massive relationship success, and that's why she's now promoting herself on podcasts. But the movie ended up with this dentist having this kind of weird crisis of consciousness where he decided not to do this anymore. But some of the situations were kind of funny, where you had this person, this evil character who was going to do these evil deeds, and suddenly they just... What was I talking about? So next time you have a bout of amnesia, next time you walk into a room and you can't remember why you walked into the room, or if you're having a conversation with someone and you suddenly forget what you were talking about, or if you're driving somewhere and you suddenly realize, how did I get here? or if you're standing at the refrigerator and you can't remember what you were looking for when you opened the refrigerator, or if you're reading a book or watching a movie and you're like, what? You have to backtrack to see what happened. Maybe it's because there's an implant in your tooth and the evil dentist has just sent a burst of amnesia cluster bomb into your brain. And maybe that's why you don't even remember why initially you decided to watch this video.